Everybody, welcome to one more round. I am stoked this morning. I've got a friend of mine, Damien Meyer, who is a partner at the law firm Engelman Berger. And if you are an entrepreneur, you're a business person, I want you to really tune into this because we're going to talk about avoiding litigation as you grow your company. And he's a wealth of knowledge. So I appreciate you being here today, Damien.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
Yeah, man. So before we kick into your notes, how'd you get into law? Like what brought you into law?
Honestly, it's a little bit of a cheesy story. I grew up in a small farm in very rural Iowa.
Okay.
I never had any interest in staying on that farm or being on that farm. And really kind of the only, kind of professions I knew about really growing up in the 80s in Iowa was doctors, lawyers, dentists or accountants or whatever. And law was kind of what I liked. And when I was 16 or 17, I saw the movie A Few Good Men with Tom Cruise. Did you order the code red? And I thought that was awesome. So I just, ended up going to law school. My brother, who's a couple years older than me, also went to law school and kind of charted that path and was doing well. So it worked. So I went to a small liberal arts college in Iowa called Coe College, and then I got a couple degrees from there, and then went right into law school at the University of Iowa. Graduated in 2002, long 20 years ago now, man. And then I moved out here with my then girlfriend, now wife. We moved out here the day after graduation in May of 2002, and we've been out here ever since. And I've been practicing law here in Arizona since 2002.
So you've been practicing law for 20 years. So
20 years.
You've probably seen the gamut of the good, bad, and ugly in business.
I've seen a lot. You never know how much you've seen or how much is out there that you haven't seen. But I've been doing commercial litigation, business type litigation, representing, small businesses, family-owned businesses, large companies, all types of companies, entrepreneurs, for probably, the last 18 years of my practice. Mm-hmm. So I do have a lot of experience in those areas, and happy to share some thoughts I have.
We're going to dig into it today because
good.
I think it's just such an important topic because I'm an entrepreneur. I've had a lot of companies. Some worked, some didn't. Some I still own today, but I'm a little more glasses half full a lot of times, and I don't always look at what potentially could be the downside. And I've had some issues because of that, and fortunately I'm a lot older now and I'm not as naive. But having an attorney that can guide you and give you advice is amazing. In fact, your partner and one of the founding, Stephen Berger, has helped me out a lot, in the past. So,
Steve's great.
Yeah,
he's great.
Awesome. Great sense of humor too. I'll never forget the, why didn't you come to me sooner? He does The Godfather, and it's so true. It's like with an attorney.
It is. So, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah. So how do you engage an attorney? Like what does a business person need to do?
Okay, so you're an entrepreneur. Let's say you're in your young 20, whatever age you are, your first business. I'm guessing that you probably have some mentors in your life or people you've met along the way that you've learned from. And the first thing I would do is I would talk to your mentors, your inner circle of colleagues that you respect, that have done well. And I would just say, hey, I got this idea, I got this company, I want to do it right. I think I should talk to an attorney. Do you know anybody? Mm-hmm. Right? So the best way to find a lawyer is to talk to people that you know. I would not recommend that you get online and just Google whatever and try to, Phoenix business attorney. That's just that's rolling the dice. That's playing craps. You don't know. Mm-hmm. Every lawyer can make their bio look great on the internet. So that's what I would suggest. Talk to people you know. Who do they like? Who do they recommend? And, even if that person that they recommend, they know a lawyer, talk to that lawyer, and that lawyer could steer you in the right direction. Mm-hmm. Like you and I, we network together. Yeah. So I always tell people hey, I do commercial litigation, but if you have a problem that if you have a legal problem, I don't care what it is, call me, because I'm dialed into the legal community. I know who can help you if I can't.
Yeah, you can refer out to
I can refer you to I can refer you to family attorney. Exactly. Mm-hmm. So work with people that you know, And then there's no magic to it. Like, I'm an attorney, I want to do business with people. I mean, I'm in a service industry, so I think sometimes people get nervous or uncomfortable talking to lawyers. Like, that's, no reason to feel that way. I mean, we're professionals out there trying to, do right, do well financially, help people, and we want to talk to you. We want to learn about your business and what's going on with your business and how we can help you.
Awesome. So what is litigation for those that don't know, and talk a little bit about that, and then how can you avoid it?
Good question. So when you hear the word, litigation, in my profession, typically in the world, litigation means when someone has actually gone to the courthouse, filed a lawsuit before a judicial tribunal in either the state courts or the federal courts. You file a complaint against the person that files the complaint's a plaintiff, and they file it against a specific person, set forth all the facts of the dispute and their causes of action against them: breach of contract, fraud, negligent misrepresentation, consumer, the list goes on and on and on, whatever it could be. But typically litigation is someone goes and files that lawsuit, and then once they file it, they have to hire a process server who then takes the hard copies of those papers and finds that defendant and says, here you go. And once that's served on you, then you have 20 days to respond.
Okay.
And that's, that process of filing the lawsuit, serving you with it, so you personally have it, and then giving you an X amount of days, that kicks it off. But I mean, that's due process. That's what we have in the United States. So you have a right to, know the charges that are against you. I mean, that's criminal, but the same thing in civil. Like, you have a right to know what you're being sued for,
right,
and then you have a right to defend yourself. Mm-hmm. So if you are an individual, like if someone sues me, I can represent myself individually. I don't have to be a lawyer. Anyone can represent themselves. Okay?
Why wouldn't I want to represent myself?
Let me get to that.
Yeah, okay.
If you are a company, so if you have created a company, you cannot represent the company, even if you own the company. Okay.
I didn't know that.
So if you there are some instances in the smaller courts, like small claims court or justice court, where an officer may be able to represent the company. But if you get sued in like the quote unquote trial courts here in Arizona, you have to have an attorney to represent that company. The president or CEO or owner of the company cannot do it unless he has a law degree.
Yeah.
So
that's
why. Well, go ahead.
No, you can go on. I have a question after that.
Okay, so that's one of the things that we're going to talk about today. And if I'm jumping ahead, we can slow down. One thing I talk about is when you, no matter what company you're in, whether you're an entrepreneur who hasn't even formed a company and you're just out there on your own, or you have a 100 employees, $50 million in revenue a year, you want to have an attorney before you need an attorney.
Yeah.
Okay, you want to have someone that you're comfortable with, that that can represent you. Because like I talked about, when that process server knocks on your door, okay, and that process server says, you've been served, all right, you look at the complaint, and if you're not well versed in the legal world, and maybe you are, maybe you aren't, but it's a lot of documents, it's confusing, and you have 20 days. If you are a resident of Arizona and your company is, registered and does business in Arizona, and you're sued in the Maricopa County Superior Court, which is the state court, you have 20 days to respond to that complaint. Mm-hmm. So that means if you don't know a lawyer, okay, you have to then find an attorney who you're comfortable with, who you trust, who you can pay, who then can take that lawsuit, review it, analyze it, figure out what your defenses are. They're going to have to learn about your business, learn what the facts are, and they're going to have to turn that around in 20 days. Okay. Now it sounds like a lot of time.
If you do it on day one.
If you do it on day one. If it takes you 10 days to find a lawyer, well, now you've got 10 days to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's just, and there's some defenses, not a lot of them, but some defenses, jurisdictional defenses, failure to state a claim, some things like that, not to get too nerdy, but if you don't make those defenses with that first filing in what's called a motion to dismiss, then those defenses could be waived. So right out of the starting gate, you've already, tripped over the first hurdle and maybe given up a defense. Mm-hmm. So that's why I strongly recommend, use that process we talked about to find an attorney. Talk to your colleagues, talk to your mentors. Who is their counsel? Who have they had good experience with? And then reach out to those people, introduce yourselves, and be comfortable with them.
Further on that point, and why I think it's so important to have somebody that you trust and you like with an attorney, they're privy to a lot of information about you, you're giving them that. It's kind of intimate, like certain things about your business, your finances, and all that kind of stuff. And gosh, if you don't know them, and how are you going to trust somebody if you don't have at least somebody who referred it or have known that person for a little while? So I think that's something people need to look at too.
And that's interesting because and that's why I like spending time with folks like you. I get this stuff every day. Like, this is just what I do. Every day I get a company's bank records, or I see their loan agreements. I see all this stuff that is private stuff to that company, and I realize it's private. The attorney-client privilege is second nature to me. You just never share anything with your client. But I don't think on a day-to-day basis, maybe, hey, this guy is giving me this stuff he doesn't want anyone else to see. It's just what I do every day, right?
And it could be embarrassing.
But it's a great point for that you say that, because it's a good reminder, story for you. I defend people in depositions all the time. I go to court. We put on evidentiary hearings before a judge where we ask witnesses and present exhibits. Do that stuff all the time. Clients, understandably, they're fish out of water. They get nervous. They don't, So I was involved. My firm was not sued for legal malpractice. We were on the side opposite of that. And I ended up being deposed as a fact witness regarding the other side's potential malpractice claim. So then I was the one sitting in the witness chair and having to answer questions. And I've been telling people for years, just all you gotta do is just relax, just listen to the question, answer the question, only the question. And you know what? It's not easy. Yeah. It's not easy to sit in that chair and not
Even
know.
You as an attorney were did you get a little nervous?
Yeah, I was absolutely. I was nervous, because so it really gave me appreciation, even more so for what clients go through and witnesses have to deal with, and it was a really good experience. But I'm kind of circling back. It's really interesting, talking to business folks, because you get reminded of, hey, this world I live in is a little bit different. I mean, it's the same with you're familiar with your lingo, what you do in your business every day that I wouldn't have a clue about. It's the same. It's good to just kind of get reminded that it
absolutely. Like in our world, we do digital marketing, so we build websites, we do Google advertising for traffic and stuff, and I really know what a lot of my customers make, at least from our efforts and stuff. And that, again, that's a very intimate thing, understanding somebody's finances, because that's one of the most important things we do on a daily basis is we go out and we earn for our families. But you don't talk about that at the dinner table a lot of times when you have friends over. Hey, how much money you make and all this kind of stuff. Yet, a professional in your life, whether it's an accountant or attorney, whatever, they know that information about you. So it's
trusted advisor, right? Which is why you want to be comfortable with who you're hiring, and you want to have time to vet people. So back to where we started, get someone you're comfortable with now before you need them.
Yeah. So what are some things to try to avoid, or what are some common things that you see entrepreneurs run into?
Probably the number one thing that we see from smaller companies, entrepreneurs, a small group of folks that decide to start a company together is they didn't sort of define things in the beginning. And when I say define things, I'm talking about basically everything under the sun, but starting with are you guys going to be doing business under your own individual names, or are you going to create a company to do that? We would always strongly encourage you to create a company, because if we go out and we're selling Josh and Damien's, lemonade stand, right? We make the best damn lemonade in the world. Hope I can say that. We make the best lemonade in the world, and we're selling millions of dollars of lemonade, and all of a sudden someone gets a bad batch of lemonade and they have a serious injury. Guess they're going to sue, and guess who's liable for that? Us. You and me. All right. You set up a company. You set up a limited liability company, an LLC, or you set up a corporation, and you do all the business through that LLC, that corporation. then that company is going to be liable, and you and I are shielded from liability. Okay, so number one, you set up a company, set up a business structure to shield yourself from personal liability for those things. Protect your assets, protect your house, protect your income, protect your kids' college fund. Don't leave that exposed, okay? So you set up a company, right? And then there's, 50 questions, 100 things that you don't think about. Like when we're selling our lemonade stand, we're thinking about how do we make the best lemonade. Yeah. That's all we're thinking about. And that's a cheesy, whatever it is we're selling.
And then how to get customers.
All you think about is product. Yeah. How do we make this product? How do we sell it? How do we market it? Okay. But there's all kinds of other stuff to think about. Like, okay, are we going to be 50-50 owners? Maybe I'm the guy that had the great idea for the product, but I didn't have any money. And you're the guy who's the financial investor. You're coming in and you're backing me. Okay, well, which one of us is going to make the critical decisions? Who, if you and I don't agree on how to proceed, who controls?
Which way do you see that going actually most of the time? Like in a 51-49%, is it the dude with the idea or the money?
It doesn't. Typically, it's not that black and white. Okay. It's more of a mixture of things. But that's just an easy way to understand it. But the way you do that is generally the guy with the money can control. Yeah. So because the guy with the money typically has done this before and has set up companies and knows how to do that. So he can sort of, I hate to say set traps for the unwary, but if he's a sophisticated guy and he's already got counsel and he's drafted up a operating agreement that he wants you to sign, you should get your own lawyer to look at that. Sure. Right? So you and your colleagues are all starting a business together. You can go start that company together with a law firm and create like an LLC. Will have an operating agreement that will identify, who owns what percentage of the company, how our distributions are made. When we start, selling millions of dollars of product, when does the company pay us? Yeah. Right? When do we take, when do we take distributions or withdrawals from the company? How does that happen? Okay. Who's going to manage this company? Who's going to make the decisions on day-to-day operations? Okay. In a lot of operating agreements, you can set up, so I'm going to manage our company. Well, I'm going to delineate what powers a manager has, all right, that he can do on his own, okay? Let's say, so do you want your manager, we're in a company together, do you want either one of us to go out to be able to go to a bank and borrow money on behalf of the company? Or do you think we should both talk about that?
Yeah, probably a mutual decision, I would imagine. Okay,
well, that's typical, but you could also say, all right, well, for any expenditure that's less than X, maybe an expenditure is less than $10,000, either one of us can make that, right? But if someone wants to go take a loan from the company, then at anything more than that, it's got to be a unanimous decision. But if you don't set up your company, right, and if you don't set these restrictions and parameters on how you're going to operate, it's free for all. It's fair game. Any one of the members or any one of the, I'm using the word member because that's what you'd call a member of a company. Any one of the individuals who's involved in the business can go and do whatever, and there's no mechanism to stop that. Yeah. All right. So let's say if we have a limited liability company is kind of the most common way to go, and then you have what's called an operating agreement, which is exactly what it sounds. It's your agreement on how you're going to operate the company. And let's say you're managing the company and you do something that's in violation of the operating agreement. Well, then there's, the other members and the company itself would have legal recourse for that violation. Right. So and I know this kind of, maybe this comes off as sounding, this is too formal, this is too rigid, or it's a lot of work, but you can set this up, for probably less than $3,000. Yeah. And this kind of goes back to the question you had, like the biggest thing I see, people don't do this right. Yes. Okay. Or if people do set up a company, it's one guy who does all of it and sets everything up and kind of sets it up in a way that's maybe not ideal. Yeah. All right. And you can set up, there's a whole bunch of points here. I talked about some, let's say, you want to buy someone out. Someone says, you know what, I want to take this and go home. I don't want to do this anymore. Okay, well, how do we value their interest? A lot of times there'll be a provision that says, okay, well, we're going to hire an appraiser who will value the company within the next 60 days, and then they'll get X% of whatever that valuation is, right? So, but you can also set it up so you incentivize staying into the company. Like, okay, so if you decide to, let's say you decide that you want to leave, well, if you own 50% of the company, your buyout's only going to be half of what your 50% is. So if the company's worth $5 million, you're not going to get 5, you're going to get 2.5. So that incentivizes everyone to stay in. Another thing you can put in the operating agreement is like, are you going to allow, going back to our lemonade stand example, are you going to allow me to work with other lemonade folks? Mm-hmm. Do I want you going working with other competitors?
No.
Maybe I do, maybe I don't. It depends on our relationship, but we can set that up and say, all of your efforts are going to be towards this business and you're not going to compete.
Right.
Okay.
Well, to just talk how important operating agreements are, and this is a personal story for me because so my wife's uncle, I think he's 87 now, Uncle Sean. He was my first mentor, and he owns, I think, still to this day, over 40 companies.
Wow.
He's done very, very well for himself. But I remember when he first started mentoring me when I was in my 20s, and he's like, when you go into business with somebody, here's why an operating agreement is important, because it's kind of like getting married. You're excited, you got the emotions, we're going to make all this money and all this. It says, but if you talk about all the things before they happen, what happens if somebody wants to leave? What happens if a partner dies? What happens if, how do we take distributions? When you set all that stuff up in the most ugly scenarios you talk about in the beginning, then you have an agreement that you'll probably never look at again. But it will.
It's there.
And he's like, because I've done this my entire life, I have partners in most of my companies, and my least standing partner at this time, this is 10 years ago, was 15 years. And he was still in business with all these people, and some of them for like 30 and 40 years, and some of his commercial buildings and whatnot. So it's super important to have an operating agreement.
It is. And I'll give you an example of, there was a family business, so this was a corporation, and, some of the kids worked with the company, and they set it up so the stock that the kids held, and if they wanted to get bought out, they would be bought out at book value, which was the value on the books, which is typically far less than the fair market value of that stock, for a very successful company.
Explain that just a little bit, because I don't think everybody would know what book and fair market.
Let's say our company is worth, and I would get an expert witness, frankly, to talk about this, but let's say our company's worth $1 million, right, when we start. And you and I each get 50 shares of the company's stock. There's 100 shares of stock. You and I each own 50 shares. And help me with my math here. Let's say the book, we each pay $1,000 for our shares, or $10,000 for our shares, okay? So the book value, what is on the books of the company is I own 50 shares of stock for $500,000, okay? But we all know stock goes up and down, okay? So we have our $1 million, we started with our $1 million company, and our company takes off. We are doing great, and our company is now valued at $10 million, okay? So that means the stock I own, half the stock in the company, if I want to sell it fair market value, I could sell it for $5 million.
Right.
Okay. But the book value, okay, what I paid for it, what's on the books of the company and that I put into the company for that stock is only $500,000. So the book value is what you hand into your accountants, what they use to sort of what the initial investment was, what you actually paid for that stock is the book value.
Got it.
And then, but the fair market value is who could I sell my 50% interest in whatever company to in an open market?
That makes total sense.
So that's way more valuable. So if you put it at book value, your incentive is I got to stay in this company, right? Because if I sell, I'm walking away from tons of money.
I'm basically just walking away with what I came in with.
Pretd much.
And if
you make salary and the company pays you salary, but you're walking away from the ownership element, So there's just different ways you can create it. And like when you have a great idea, you invent a software program or whatever, and the company is centered around that. Well, who owns that IP? Who owns that when it's done? So you can put the operating agreement, this IP is owned by Josh, and if we dissolve this limited liability company, he will maintain the IP. The IP does not, ownership of the IP does not transfer to the company. Ownership of the IP does not transfer to any other member in this company. Josh owns the IP, and you can protect yourself that way.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you were talking about 4 things that people don't know about litigation earlier.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear.
So we talked about mentors, and it's kind of crazy when I say this because I am a little bit, in some ways, talking myself out of the opportunity to represent people. But unless you are a very large company and you tens of thousands of dollars, you don't notice that coming in and out every day. Like you're talking like large banks, large companies, smaller companies, a $50,000 expense can be huge, right? That can make or break, it's very significant. That can mean having to lay off an employee. That could mean a lot of things, but it is very challenging to do a commercial litigation case, a contractual dispute case for any amount less than, I would say, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000, regardless of the amount that's at dispute. Because there are some cases, whether it's a $10 million case or whether it's a $50,000 case, the legal issues are equally complex. Okay, and you have to do that same amount of work. There's certain things that you have to do. And I hear this from my real estate lawyers all the time. A real estate deal, there's things I have to draft an agreement. There's things that we have to address, whether it's a $2 million deal or a $200,000 deal. So, and it just can get very costly. Okay, it can be very, and that's why we talked about, that's why this is kind of about litigation avoidance, right? Because it can be so expensive to get into litigation. But the 4 things I tell people, and this is a mentor of mine that probably 10, 15 years ago, I remember it like yesterday. We were in a client meeting and I heard him say this. It's kind of always stuck with me. So the 4 things he told me is, 1, okay, this lawsuit is gonna take up more time than you think. So what that means is, Josh, rather than you working on devoting your time to Regenerate IV and marketing that company and improving that, instead of spending time doing that, you're gonna be spending more time responding to emails to me, talking to me about the status of your case, helping me find documents in your files that are helpful to your case. Okay, so you're gonna spend more time away from your business than you realize. That's number 1.
Yeah, so I'm not generating revenue now, I'm paying for my time.
Yeah, talking to me is not a revenue source for you, right? It's just not, okay? So that's number 1. Number 2, litigation is expensive, like we talked about. This is going to cost more money than you think, most likely. Like a lot of times when we start a case, we'll ask for a retainer of $10,000, and then we'll bill against that. But like I said, it's very routine to get like $50,000 could be the bare minimum you're spending on and I'm talking about a real disputed lawsuit where you're going through the whole thing, you're deposing witnesses, you're taking discovery, and you're preparing to try this thing. Okay, $50,000 easier. So this is going to be more expensive for you than you think. Okay. 3, stress. Litigation is inherently stressful. This is going to cause you to stay awake at night. It's going to create more stress for you than you think. Most people. I mean, if you're, if you're a
sociopath, maybe not. But yeah.
But people have never been through this before, and there's a lot of first-time, people have never been in courts before, and good for them. But litigation is going to be more stressful than you think. And then the last thing I'll tell them is the results are completely unpredictable. And particularly when you haven't done some of the things we talked about doing, like setting up your company and setting parameters and boundaries and rules, if it's just been a free-for-all, then it's very difficult to predict what the results are. Now, if you set it up properly, if you have an operating agreement, someone's violated that, then I can give you a better idea of, hey, these are some really solid claims, and I think they're gonna have a hard time disputing this, and I like where we're at here. I still can never guarantee you a result. Like under, we have ethical rules when we, like doctors have the Hippocratic oath, do no harm. Lawyers have similar ethical rules that we have to live by. Attorney-client privilege is probably the most common one. But one of our rules is we cannot guarantee results to clients. That's forbidden. I can't do it. So so even if I wanted to tell you 100% chance, blah, blah, I'm not supposed to do that.
Yeah.
Right. So it's unpredictable. So recap: more time, more money, more stress. Can't guarantee a result.
Yeah, that sounds like. In fact, like a long time ago, I had a partner that he didn't want to pay me and he didn't want to do work. So I'm like, okay, I'm gonna go do this on my own. This is 12 years ago or so, and I remember getting the notice because he tried to sue me, and he had like some just out of college dude send me like a demand letter, and I'm like, first time I've ever experienced that. I'm like, would I do something wrong? And I had to like walk through my brain. And no, I didn't do anything wrong at all. Like we didn't have an operating agreement, anything like that. He didn't want to pay me, no problem. I'm gonna go boogie on down the road, do my own thing. And but it was stressful. I remember how stressful. I remember keeping me up at night, like that one thing, and it never went anywhere. Actually, we never went to court or anything. And then I found out because I looked at the attorney. And I'm like, this dude's like, like 27 years old. What's he gonna do to me, right? But I do remember being stressful. It didn't cost me any money at that time. Right. But man, like you don't want to go through that kind of stuff. I mean, there's just no reason if you can avoid a lawsuit.
If you can avoid it, and that's kind of spins into one of the next things we talked about is like litigation avoidance. Is don't let problems just sort of fester, right? Like if you see something coming, like if you have a problem with a vendor where you think he's overcharging you, or he's not performing under the agreement you have with them. You need to address that professionally, but quickly, right? Yep. And that's why if you have a lawyer, they can help you with that and help you do that in the right way. Like I'll have an example for you. I was representing general contractor who came to me, never met him before, it was a referral to one of my partners, but he came to me and he said, hey, I did my neighbor a favor. He's a land developer, and he said, hey, I have these 3 lots in kind of more rural Arizona. Can you just build the homes on them for me? My guy was a custom home builder. And he says, sure, he'll build the homes for him. And then these 3, like I said, this was rural, so these 3 homes were served by a well. So my client's general contractor had nothing to do with the well, right? So he finishes the homes, the well's been dug, no problems with the well. And then maybe 6 months in, they'd discover arsenic in the water, which sounds bad, but like that's a common little elevated arsenic, nothing to be worried about. But I mean, that's in it. So then these 3 homeowners kind of pull together and they texting my client, hey, there's problems with the well. So what I wish he would have done, my client would have done, was call me right away and say, hey, this is what's going on. But what he did was, because again, he wanted to kind of help his neighbor who was elderly and was a developer, but he's like, okay, well, let me see what I can do. Kind of starts helping them, starts hauling water in. So then they think, well, hey, this guy's like taking responsibility. Like, why would he be, hauling in water? Why would he be talking to us about this if it wasn't on his plate? And so these guys are starting to threaten lawsuits against him, this, that, and the other. And wisely at that point he came in, and I don't know a lot about groundwater, and that's part of what I love about my job is I get to learn new stuff. But I did a little research. I called the Arizona Department of Water Services and the ground well permit folks, and I'm like, hey, this is my situation. I'm reading your literature here, and once you dig a well, as I understand it, there's no guarantees of what the water quality is going to be. You're on it, and they're like, yeah, that's absolutely right. And then here's some literature. So I sent these 3 homeowners, 2-page letter that said, hey, I represent this contractor. I understand you might be having some problems with the well. Here's the report you gave us, but this is not, you seem to think that this general contractor is somehow liable for this. He is not. Yeah. 1, this isn't the scope of work. And 2, even if it was, Once he digs a well and the Arizona Department of Water Services, I hope I have that right, certifies the well, you're on your own.
Yeah.
And what we understand your solution to this is you drill deeper, you do whatever, and like here's an estimate that we had for you. But don't contact him anymore. He's not hauling any more water for you. If you want to deal with this, then you talk to the Arizona Department of Water Services, or you hire someone to dig your well deeper. Boom. 2-page letter, probably 2 hours of legal work, if that. Never hurt those people again. Now, if he would have kept, let that fester, kept hauling water, kept communicating with them, they probably would have sued him. And he would have been, he still would have won that case, I think 100 times out of 100.
Yeah.
But he would have had to pay, thousands of dollars to do that. But he saw a problem, he got a lawyer, he took care of it. Now, the alternative that I see happen is, and you can see this in the construction case sometimes, is if you hire someone to do some construction work for you, okay, we have the Arizona Prompt Pay Act, all right? You have a construction contract, they send you an invoice, and you think, this is crap. Yeah. Like, they didn't do 2/3 of this stuff. They just sent me a little
bit on that.
Yeah, they just sent me a $150,000 bill, but I think they've only done like $50,000 of work, and our contract was only for $75,000. I'm not paying that. Well, guess what? Under the Arizona Prompt Pay Act, if you're the owner and you don't dispute an invoice within 14 days, by law, that invoice can be deemed certified, and you have now, not only that is that invoice certified by law, you're paying 1.5% a month on it.
Wow.
So the point is, don't let problems fester. And there's scenarios where, let's say you call me and you have an issue with the vendor, and you don't want to escalate things, which I get. So I can say, okay, well, let me write a letter for you. All right, I'll write a letter. You put your name on it, call it ghostwriting, right? And then this is what I want you to communicate. You can tell them, hey, in section 7G of your contract, you're supposed to be paying me within 15 days, and we're now 30 days out on this payment. This needs to be paid,
Yeah.
And hey, you're supposed to be delivering me 100 widgets a month, and I've only gotten 15 the last 2 months. You get on it right away. Or if someone's unhappy, the other way, hey, like my general contractor, people are complaining to him about something that's not his fault. Okay, well, I can help you draft a letter in a nice professional way that you can send to them and nicely say, go pound sand. So don't let, because the longer things fester, and it's just kind of human nature, right? The more things fester, the more people get dug into their ways, and the more then things get personal. Then there's ultimatums, and then before you know it, someone's suing somebody, and then
And it's such a great point. My business partner now, who's also a mentor of mine, he taught me, when we first started doing business together, every once in a while you'd have somebody that was disappointed or angry at something, right? It just unfortunately happens in business. And he's like, dude, don't send an email. Just pick up the phone, call them. I promise you, it will be resolved like that. They're probably not as mad as it sounds in the email. So, but again, what could turn into a lawsuit, no, you just pick up the phone, talk to them, you try to resolve it as quickly as you can with that person, and then you can diffuse a situation that could have gone to litigation if you just let it fester.
And you get that sense too, as you are in business longer and you get to know people, and you can recognize certain traits, or the way companies do business, where sometimes you might make that phone call, right? But you'll follow that phone call up with an email that says, hey, Steve, great talking to you. Hey, just want to confirm that, hey, you are going to start delivering those 100 widgets. I can get my next one on April 1st, and then you'll make up the losses, document it, And, there may be some people that you're like, what, this guy I've done business with for 15 years. He just came on a couple, maybe something that's personal life happened where he was, just a little off his game for 60 days. That guy you call, him, you trust him. That guy, maybe you don't follow up with an email because you know him and you don't want to risk sort of hurting. Yeah. So you kind of just gauge that with how you how you do business,
Yeah.
you know, and how your style, right? Because the thing with ghostwriting is you have to make sure that it's the way you would, like if I'm going to write a letter for you, it's still got to be like, the person's got to read it and be like, oh yeah, Josh is telling me this, and you know, maybe a little help, but yeah, this is the right contract. It's got to be genuine.
That makes
still.
sense.
So
how, this is actually an important question. Number one, how can people reach you? And when you're looking at some, having an attorney before you need one, how much do you got to pay them to get started?
Good question. So, well, you can reach me at Engelman Berger. We're www.eblawyers.com. So you can find us very easily. And just type in Engelman Berger PC, and we're there. We've been in business for over 20 years, so we're easy to find. And my phone number, I can give you that.
Yeah, throw the phone number. We'll pop
direct dial right to my desk, 602-222-4948. You can reach me. You'll talk to me. You won't talk to a receptionist, and I'll be happy to talk to you. So as far as what does it cost to hire an attorney, it can cost different amounts at different times. Okay, so my advice, what I've been telling you today, is get an attorney on board before you need him, right? So, we all know, larger companies have in-house counsel. They have a lawyer that's an employee of the company that's there 24/7. When they have a problem, they can talk to that person. Smaller companies, can't afford that. So what I tell people to do is, hey, you can hire me, maybe pay me, for a couple hours, give me a retainer. That would be for a couple hours of my time. Let's say if you want to give me $1,000 or $500, you can retain me. And then I'm not going to bill you that. I'm just going to hold that. I just hold that money until you have a problem and you want me to represent you. So let's say you hire me, you come and talk to me, and I learn, hey, John, okay, you do regenerated IV, you have aftershock media, okay, great. Tell me a little bit about the business. What are the challenges? What keeps you up at night? What's most critical to you? How can I help? Is there anything we need to do right now? Like maybe your contract needs to be tightened up. When's the last time you've had that reviewed? So we can do some trouble spotting. That's like maybe an hour or two conversation, and that's not going to be that expensive. That doesn't have to be a retainer. But when we get to the point where you're going to hire somebody, you want to have a letter. You have an agreement with your lawyer, just like you should with anyone else, right? A written agreement, and you can negotiate that. So if you want to have a lawyer on retainer that it should not have to cost you a lot of money to do that.
Okay.
And then, now, if you get foul if you have me on retainer and say I have $1,000 retainer and I just sort of help you write a letter every now and then, or you want to, hey, can I bounce this off of you? What do you think I should do? 15-minute call. Stuff that's not going to be that expensive.
Yeah.
Then we're going to keep that not going to be expensive. I'm not going to ask you for more money. But if you get served with a lawsuit, that we have to deal with, then it's going to be
you're going to need to give them more money.
You're going to need to have that retainer more.
But
just to have that lawyer in place, like let's say what I recommend is you find a lawyer that can help you set up your company. And it may be, like if you come to me to set up your company, I'm gonna have one of my colleagues put together the operating agreement for you, and I can help and do that. But he or she's gonna do that, and then we'll be in touch and I'll know the business. And then if there's a problem that comes up, then you call me, right? So the best way to do is find that firm, find that lawyer that can help you set up your company with his colleagues, or he can do it himself, and then stick with that firm. Like know that they can do your business deals, but also represent you, which is like that's what our firm. Like we're kind of a full service shop, Damien Meyer. So I don't do tons of transactional stuff. Like if I need to rewrite an entire purchase agreement for you, I will do that, but I will get assistance from one of my transactional lawyers, who can do it more efficiently than me, who's frankly more of an expert in that area than I am. So find a firm that you're comfortable with, where have one main contact, but know who's doing your work, and if you do it before the proverbial what hits the fan, it's going to cost you very little money.
Yeah. Like
I am not going to charge you, like we bill by the hour. If you've, retained me for my services to kind of be your, outside counsel, and we haven't talked for 6 months, because congratulations, you haven't had any legal issues coming up in 6 months, it doesn't cost you anything. I'm not sending you a bill unless I do something for you.
Right. That's very cool.
So,
I think a lot of people don't know that, and that's why it's very important for people that, like you said, find it before you need it, and it's not going to cost you a lot of money. So this is awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and giving the advice and kind of walking through the process for people, because I think it's super helpful.
And every situation is different, and so call me. Call your lawyer and just tell them what's going on, and they'll, every situation is different. So you always want to talk to your trusted counsel and set your situation up. Just because you're someone had to maybe pay a $10,000 retainer to talk to anybody, that may not be your situation.
Yeah,
everything's different. So if you're successful enough to develop a business, to have an idea, a product, a service that you can do, you're gonna have no problem being able to speak to a lawyer, get a feel for that person if that's somebody you want to do business with, and you'll be able to navigate that process of hiring a lawyer. Right. So awesome. If you're out there watching this, you do not be nervous about it, be confident about it, and be comfortable contacting counsel.
Very cool. So, hey guys, I know you got a ton out of this, so make sure if you don't have an attorney, reach out to Damien, and then also leave a comment, subscribe to the channel. This is the type of value we want to continue to provide. You don't want to miss episodes. So thanks so much. We will see you next time.